Hi, welcome to Rue's Astro Workshop. My name's Rue. When I got this Bridgeport, the drawbar that was, well, there wasn't a drawbar when I went to look at it in the from the company that I bought it from. There wasn't actually a drawbar in it, and I said, "Oh, this hasn't got a drawbar." When I was trying to sort of see what I was feeling up inside up inside here actually, just to make sure that up inside the spindle, to make sure that it wasn't sort of chowdered up and everything, and I thought, oh, hang on a minute, shouldn't there be a drawbar here? And so I said to the guy, there's no drawbar. And he said, oh, hang on, we've got some drawbars somewhere. So he went off and he came back and he said, here you go, there's a drawbar, and he put it in. I didn't think anything more of it. Now, when I got back, I realised that it was actually a drawbar for a variable speed head, not a pulley head like mine. Mine's a Series 1J or whatever it's called, which has got the step pulleys in it, and rather than the variable speed pulley arrangement. And in fact, the variable speed pulley drawbar is ever so slightly longer than the standard one. This is what I would call a standard one, or this one, I should say. So I had to chop it down. It also was from it had a closer on it, and a pneumatic or some other technology closer on it. So at the top, it had this sort of above the hex section, there was a very coarse type spline on it, which obviously engaged with the chuck of the pneumatic doofer. So I chopped that off, and then when I tried it, I had to screw my collets in so far that it took about 15 minutes down into the collet, and it was like, God, this can't be normal. So I decided that I would chop off the threads of the end of the drawbar. So I chopped about half of the threads. I didn't quite know how much to chop off. I thought, well, tried a bit of experimentation and thought, well, I'll chop this many off. So I chopped them off, and it's been fine. It's been fine. It hasn't got very many turns. It might be about 4 or 5 turns, and then it pulls tight. So that's been absolutely fine. But then a few months ago, I was on. I've always stuck with R8 collets, because for most of what I do, they're absolutely fine. But there's one sort of scenario which is, hang on a minute, let me just go and get my drill chuck. There's one scenario which is a bit of a pain, and that's when you're using the drill, using the drill chuck, which there's the standard collet, and you're drilling and tapping holes, and you're milling areas out, and you're doing sort of a number of operations, and you're swapping between the drill and the collet. And of course, if you can imagine a drill in here sticking out and a milling bit sticking out here, you're forever cranking the knee up and down because of that difference of the length of the chuck, which is quite long. This is a keyless chuck, which is is it a Jacobs? Yeah, it's a Jacobs keyless chuck. So that's quite long, as you can see. It's so you've got always cranking the knee up and down like that, which is a real pain in the arse. Really? So I was talking to a chap at the Auto Jumble who runs Bridgeports, and he said, well, when you're doing those sorts of operations, don't use R8s, use a collet chuck, like this is an ER32 collet chuck. So I thought, well, that's not a bad idea, because he said what you can do is you can hold milling cutters and drill bits in these, so you can swap between the two relatively quickly. And even if you do have to, if you want to change for your drilling chuck, then the difference is a lot less. So I thought, well, that's not a bad idea. Anyway, later that morning, there was a chap who had one, and it's only a relatively inexpensive ER32. It's been used. He'd used it, I think, at work, and they got rid of it, or it followed him home or something. I'm not quite sure, but it seems reasonable quality and everything. It's even got a collet in it. It even had a collet in it. So I thought, oh great, I haven't got any ER32 collets, but that was soon sold because I think it was my birthday or something, And my wife's always saying, what do you buy the man who's got everything? So I said, well, a set of ER32 Collets. And she said, I don't know what they are, but you're quite welcome to them. So I ended up with a brand new set of Collets. They're only sort of, where are they? The Chinese ones, but they're absolutely fine, and they seem to work quite nicely. And subsequently, I've got I bought a 5C to ER32 chuck adapter chuck for my lathe. So now I can run 5C, which one I would normally use. But if I've got something awkward size, which I haven't got a 5C collet for, because as you know, 5C collets really haven't got a big range on them, I now can use an ER32 collet on those, because they expand to any size. So you can chuck obscure bits and pieces and tools and things like that in there. So I've sort of already been using the ER32 collet system on there. But the reason why I've never successfully used it with my Bridgeport is because for some reason, if I hold these up together, you'll see that this actually is ever so slightly shorter. The actual, I don't know if you can see it there, but if I try and do an approximation, it's about like that. You can see that the collet chuck, which is this one here, is ever so slightly shorter. Not only that, but if you look up the end, you'll see that the threads, I'll do a shot of that for you so you can see, but the threads on the collet chuck are actually slightly more recessed than they are on all of my other. This is a hard hinge collet, I think. Yeah, it's a hard hinge. I've got a set of a limited set, but nevertheless a nice set of hard hinge collets for. Are they hard hinge? This one is actually not a hard hinge. It says a something on it. Anyway, I've got a nice set of proper English or American made collets, and they all fit fine. But with my chop off job, which I explained earlier, it doesn't reach this, so I shove this up the spout, twiddle the drawbar, and it won't even catch the thread, let alone actually get a couple of turns on to pull it up tight. So that ain't any good. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is a new drawbar. So what we have here was bought from a UK company called Rotor Grip, who I think they distribute bison and all that sort of thing. And I went on eBay and I typed in drawbar, and this came up. And this is for a step pulley Bridgeport Series 1, brand new. I think it was only about 16 quid, so I thought it's not even worth making one for that. So let's take it out of the packet. But you can see it's got sort of, it's got a nice hex on the top, and it's got a spacer on there, which I've no idea what the arrangement is in there. I can't remember a spacer, like a loose spacer like that, so maybe that's part of my problem. And then on the end there's a little protective plastic thing on there. We'll take that off just to check that. I've just checked that this is actually an imperial. Yeah, there you go. That screws straight in there. So hopefully we'll be able to draw that through there. So what we've got to do is simple job, fitting a drawbar into a Bridgeport. All you do is pop the old one out, pop the new one in. Slight problem with that is that my Bridgeport head touches the ceiling. Yep, and I'm sure that's the case for a lot of people who have Bridgeports in garages. So what we're going to have to do is tilt the whole head on its side, and I can change the drawbar, and then following that I can put it back straight again, and I can tram it all back in again. So that's what we're going to do. So the first thing you'll see about the head of my Bridgeport is that the ceiling is there, and this light, which I did move as far this way as I could, but the wire was only long enough to get that far without having to completely rewire it and everything. That was the day the Bridgeport arrived, and of course subsequently I've never bothered to try and move the light further along, which I really should do. But you can see this is the drawbar here. And you can see it is the lights there. So what we're going to have to do is rotate the head, and I'm going to rotate it that way because there's the most clearance that way, and then we can change it out. Now to do that, there are 4 bolts on the front. These 4 bolts, everything on a Bridgeport is 3/4 inch. So everything, the spanner that fits this, or wrench, whatever you want to call it, also fits these. Also fits the ones that tilt, that nod the head. It fits everything. So that's pretty much all you need to do this job. So I just need to, these 4 bolts you slacken off, And then there's a bolt here which is connected to a worm. There's a worm and wheel, and by turning that I can tilt. It's actually graduated, as you can see here, so you can tilt it to any angle you want if you want to actually mill things on an angle. Very rarely use that. You tend to angle the work rather than the head, but it can be done. It's a very versatile machine, is the Bridgeport. So let me just slacken these four off, and that can come off. Don't need that. Okay, so there's that slackened off. Right. Let me just, before I do that, let me just show you what I mean by this. Now, if I put an ordinary collet in here, an ordinary collet in here, and it's just caught 1, 2, 3, 4 flicks. So that's not 4 revolutions. It's probably only 2.5, 3. So it's probably not enough engagement really anyway. But that's holding that collet. So if I do the same with, well, I'm sure you believe me, you're not going to be able to see it not fit. Hang on a minute. I need to bring this down a bit. Is that going to be bothering you guys now? Right, so that's the collet chuck, and I can feel the drawbar just to say dinking the top of it, but it's not getting inside there to pick up that thread. So let's continue with the job. So we've undone those. So now we should be able to turn this bolt. There we go. You can see that's going nodding that way. So we want to go the other way. So let me just wind the. Here we go. And hopefully, I'll slacken these some more. Hopefully, it's going to clear the light. Might not clear the light, in which case it is doing just barging its way past. There we go. There we go. And tipping her up. I should use a mount. I'm not sure. It'll go all the way to 90 degrees and turn it into a boring. Right. So there we go. That's the old one out. Right now, hopefully, where's the new one? What have I done with it? There it is. Hopefully this is longer. It's exactly the same length. However, this has got that spacer on it, so maybe I don't need the spacer. Let's give it a try. I'm going to try it without the spacer. Without the spacer, it's about, well, let me just show you. Without the spacer, it's, come on, focus. You can see the difference there. So that's the difference. Without that spacer. So obviously I don't need that spacer. Right, let me just move that out of the way. Okay, so this goes in. Oops, there's another spacer. Oh, there's a big pile of washers here as well. Interesting. Pile of washers and a spacer. Ah, right, so maybe that's the same spacer. Oh, it's very similar. There's a washer as well, so let me keep the washer. I think the washer's probably a good idea, don't you? It'll allow a bit more torque. There you go, so I'll put the washer back on. And then we go down the hole. Right. Can't wait to try this. Been meaning to do this for such a long time. Right. Hey. That's it, screwing in. I've got to screw all my collets in loads more now. That's the only downside, but it's not the end of the world. Oops. Let me just put the brake on. There we go. There we go. Rock solid. Hee. Brilliant. Right, just got to put this up back right, and then we've got to tram the head back in, because obviously we've had it on a tilt. So notice the oil dripping out of the head. Great oil system on this. It's just a total loss oil system. You put oil in, and it just drips out everywhere. So let me get this. Put it within about eighth hour. So let me just double check it before we get excited. In my experience, that's quite close. I mean, you can get down to a thou if you spend hours on this. So, a job that I've been meaning to do for ever such a long time, and I finally got around to it, installing my new drawbar. I hope you found that mildly interesting, and the good news is that we can now get on with the next job, which hopefully I shall be making a video of, which is, I think I'll just keep that under my hat for the time being. So thanks for tuning in and watching, and see you on the next video. Back to it.